Thanks. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for EIV webinar on Art of Corporate Volunteering, Generating Revenue from Employee Volunteering. I know we put a very long name, but we wanted to make it sound fancy and we wanted to cover all the aspects that we're going to talk today. So we have Neha Shrivastava, who was the director for volunteering at Goodera and has recently switched her job. Between the time when we were talking to her, finalizing and sending up communications. So thanks Neha for joining us. Neha is going to talk about how do you effectively do corporate partnerships for employee volunteering and how do you charge them effectively? What are the areas where you charge them for? A lot of you may have questions around how to pitch corporates, while Neha, in the interest of time, may be able to do very little about it, because pitching to a corporate is a vast topic that maybe can be covered in one of our next webinars, perhaps. So if we can stick to how do you effectively do corporate partnerships and how do you effectively charge them for your employee volunteering programs and questions around them. We will share the presentation that Neha will be using. We'll share the recording as well. And Neha has also very beautifully curated some tools and resources that we can use and go back to refer, that we'll be sharing as well. So those of you who are taking notes, taking screenshots, can focus all of your attention on what Neha is going to speak. About Neha, so Neha comes with almost 2 decades of experience working with intermediaries like iVolunteer and Goodera. I like to believe that all sorts of intermediaries that have existed in India that have worked with corporate volunteering, Neha has been there shaping them in some way or other and has been promoting corporate volunteering, maybe when it was not mandatory for people to do corporate volunteering through any of the laws. So over to you, Neha. Thank you so much. We have our team members, Karthike, Dharmraj, Venkat and Oishik. Karthike, if you could please share the screen. Thanks, Neha. Over to you. Quickly, sorry, taking 30 more seconds, is that we're going to talk firstly about Neha's briefly going to talk about corporate partnerships. We're going to take a short break there so that we're not listening to her too much, like you're listening to me. And then we're going to talk about costings and how do you charge them. And then we'll move for a Q&A. So please keep your questions ready, put them in chat. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Megha. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for coming on a Saturday morning. Not early, but yeah, still before lunch. I would call it early only. So thanks, Megha and the team for giving this opportunity. And thanks for the wonderful introduction, Megha. We'll quickly move on to the day. I think she's already very beautifully described on why I am here and why I'm taking the session. So really not going to focus too much on that. So how we have planned today's time is we're going to take about 35 to 40 minutes about different aspects, about different.
Neha, you went on mute.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. So Karthike, can you move to the next slide, please? Yeah, so what we've tried to do is we've tried to capture all these expectations in our presentation and in the topics that we are going to cover. Anything which we are not able to cover and it falls within the purview of generating revenues through corporate volunteering, we'll try and answer during the Q&A. What we're going to see right now in the next 30 odd minutes is about basics of employee volunteering, tips to sustain voluntary engagement, how to pitch to a corporate. So we are doing a little bit of this. There are too many expectations around this particular question on how do you pitch to a corporate and how do you design an engagement plan for the employees, stakeholder management, and how to charge the corporates for the same, and understand how to create sustainable volunteering opportunities. Is there any official documentation that we are supposed to do once the partnership is finalized? So these are the expectations which we're going to primarily cover.
You're muted again, sorry.
Why is this happening?
We don't know, sorry.
Okay, so we are going to focus on revenues through corporate volunteering because it is important for all of us to sustain ourselves. Next slide. So starting off with a very, very complex, yet a very simple. diagram. So this is corporate volunteering program, and this is how it's perceived by different corporates. I can hear my echo.
Yes.
Is it better?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this basically just explains how different corporates are looking at the corporate volunteering program these days. It's either a CSR or it's classified as a brand building activity under reputation and brand purpose, or it is a mere employee engagement. And for each of this, the decision makers may be different. The stakeholders may be slightly different for each of these. And that's the reason why we have put together this very simple yet complex mind map here, so that we understand what falls within, which sort of vertical. This will be useful after we cover a couple of more things about volunteering program. Next slide. So before we start building any corporate volunteering program or even meeting, the corporates to design the volunteering program, we need to really understand the objective on why a corporate wants to do a volunteering program. Is it an employee engagement tool for them? Is it a CSR activity for them? Or is it a brand building activity? And trust me, for all these three objectives, there is equal, there's equal opportunity for us to generate revenues. If it's an employee engagement activity for the corporate, then obviously for them, the intention is to really attract and recruit talent, the right people in the organization, to increase the existing employees' motivation, their satisfaction, their morale, and to reinforce the core values. Every HR has core values. Every brand has a core value. So for employee engagement, these are the essentials which they would look out for building a program, and these will be the objectives. Similarly, if it's a CSR activity for the corporate and they want to build the program around that, they will look at more focus on the beneficiary. They will look at how it is, broadening their support for the community. How is their CSR grant being utilized in the most meaningful manner? And whether it is making a positive impact for planet and people, is it aligning to any SDGs? So that's what typically CSR looks for. And if it's a brand building excellent, I think nothing like it to generate revenues than really doing an activity for brand building. So in which case they want their employees to become their brand ambassador. They want to improve their investors' appeal. They want to strengthen their consumer engagement and loyalty. Kartika, can we move to the next slide? Once we have understood and ascertained the objective, I think it's extremely important that we start putting in the right pitch to the corporate. Now, this pitch could be in form of a dialogue, a conversation, or you can just go and meet them or send them the PPT, whatever works for you. If I'm going too fast, then you all can just let me know, Megha. I'm just going to trust you to let me know if I'm going too fast.
Yeah, I think it's right. It's okay.
Okay. So framing the right pitch, I think a lot of people had this question, so put together like this particular slide. We are going to go to each of these in very, not in details, but briefly explain to you all these pointers. Can we move to the next slide, Kartikeya? So we'll start with asking some tough questions. Whenever we have the opportunity to meet the client, and they have given you the advantage of presenting to them that you can help create a volunteering program for my organization. A lot of time we just don't ask the questions because we are just so happy about the opportunity given to us, and we just take it for granted that we'll just make this nice volunteering program and we'll send it across to them and they'll be happy to do it, because we are talking about so much numbers of beneficiary, so much SDGs alignment, so much of brand visibility, that sometimes we just forget to ask the right questions. But it's extremely important for us to understand the right questions, to ask the right questions, know our customers, establish the common grounds, and then set the expectations right. Otherwise, what will happen on the day of the volunteering event? It's a very funny example, but yeah, they often things about 2 gulab jamuns versus 1 gulab jamun. So we really don't want to be there. We want to really set the right expectation where it's a win-win for both volunteers, all three, in fact, volunteers, employers, and the organizations who are organizing the entire event. So I have put together a small matrix. It's like a set of questions that you can refer to understand your clients better, to understand the common ground and set the expectation. Kartika, can you click on the PDF? I'll not take too much time. I just want to basically. Yeah. So see, these are the questions which I believe has worked for me, for the organization where I've worked in the past, both as an intermediary and also as an organization. I have worked with both intermediaries and organizations, so I know that these questions are extremely helpful. We are going to share the PDF with you. You can choose to use the same question, or you can choose to use your own questions and let us know what else can be added to this. So yeah, first is to understand your client. This is an exercise which is extremely important when you're pitching to a client. You have to understand what they've done in the past. What are the values? What does their brand stand for? What sort of employee engagement efforts have been undertaken in the past? What sort of CSR efforts have been undertaken in the past? I'm going to use CSR quite a bit here because I know that about 90 plus people who registered, they are from the non-profit background and they do have a ATG certificate. So this may be very useful. Understand their mission statement. Who are their top competitors? What kind of program their top competitors have? Are there any cultural concerns with the client? So it's extremely important. Again, the same applies to establishing the common ground and setting the expectation. Just refer to these questions, it should be enough. Can we go to the slide?
One second now.
Yeah. Okay, I think I'll just continue talking while Kartikeya presents the screen. So once we know what's the client like, we've set the expectation, some more or less you would have also established the objective on why they want to do that work. Why do they want to do a program? How can you align the program with the business objective? Like a very simple example, most often when banking or financial institution, they reach out, they will often demand for a financial workshop, right? Because it aligns with their business objectives. Similarly, a lot it is also about women empowerment and girl child education on tech. So they'll have girls for tech sort of program. Similarly, if are you able to hear me?
Yes, Neha.
Okay. Similarly, a lot of organization those who are centered in the rural area, they will do some sort of volunteering program which will help rural development. So often, once you've established your client, understood everything, you've understood the business objective, it's so much easier for you to actually design the program for them. Kartikeya, can we move to the next slide? So now we have established everything that we need to. Now we have to come to start planning and building the program. I think some of the very basics that we need to keep in consideration is that one size doesn't fit all. So what may work for a Barclays may not work for a Citibank, even though they are both banking institutions. What may work for a Bank of America will definitely not work for ICICI Bank, because again, it will not fit in. Similarly, the same sort of community volunteering engagement or employee volunteering engagement may not fit in for urban centers, rural centers, tier A cities, tier B cities. So you have to set that expectation right with the client and make them understand that. And see, they don't know. I mean, a lot of time, they probably wouldn't even know that it will not work out. Like a very simple example. So we had this clients and they were working on a campaign called Keep It Blue. It was about water, coastal areas, water, river, coastal cleanup. You can only do a coastal cleanup in the areas where there is a coast or there is a water body. So you give me a list of 30 cities and you tell me that I want to do a coastal cleanup. I want to do a campaign called Keep It Blue in these 30 cities. What am I going to clean? So then you have to come up with an alternative plan, have the expectations aligned, and then tell them that this may not work out. Similarly, a lot of time we get requests saying that we want to do spoken English workshop for children. And all the volunteers who may turn up, they only know English or Hindi. They do not know the local language. It does not work. You have to keep that in consideration, and you have to set the expectation with the client because it's primarily your job to do that. Otherwise, it will not be a win-win, and the last day there would be some sort of challenges. Megha, you want to, Karthike, move to the next slide, please. Whenever designing any program for the clients, understand that they have to work in the community around which their premises are, their offices are. And that is going to be extremely beneficial for them and for you if you do a need assessment around the neighborhood, come up with some sort of volunteering opportunities in the local communities, because that works out the best, and then help them, with the execution on the same. I mean, this may not be a perfect example of what I'm saying, but still, HUL is a very, very famous, HUL is extremely famous for its FMCG products. A lot of their consumers are in the rural areas. So they have a very strong rural immersion program, which is based on volunteering, the principles of volunteering, like a social sabbatical sort of a program. But it's really not a social sabbatical or a volunteering program, but they do have a rural immersion program where the set of group, they actually go to the rural areas and they live there to understand the challenges and come up with a solution. And they then are able to kind of penetrate that particular market. So it's a classic example of how they are deepening their community connection. So they are bringing in the brand visibility in the area where they were not so well known, some years ago, but through their volunteering, they're able to do that. Similarly, if you consider, a lot of social sabbatical programs are coming up, and they're all about deepening the community connections and the brand visibility only by their employees being their brand ambassador and the volunteering being the tool to do that. So it's extremely important that you engage the communities. Yeah, Karthike, you were right on spot. Then comes the measurability. So this is like a very hot topic of discussion. And after every volunteering project is over, we have to send out the report. And basis that report, trust me, that's a report is basically the sort of a proposal for your next volunteering program, because it's a make or a break. If your report talks about all the things that a company is looking for, a corporate is looking for, they will come back to you to volunteer again. Whereas if it has missed out on, if there's no expectation alignment, then there's definitely going to be a lot of hiccups moving forward. So this is my experience. I have tried to design a very simple matrix, aligning what is expected from you, basis the objective of the volunteering program. So what is required for an employee engagement? If the objective is employee engagement, what will the corporate will look for? If it's CSR, then what is it that they look for? And if it's a brand building activity, what is it that they look for? Karthike, can you refer to the PDF, please? So the reason I've designed the simple matrix, and this may not be true for everything, please understand this is something which I have designed thinking that this will work. If you believe that this is not something which is suitable and there could be a better way, please feel free to let us know. You can share it with all of us. I have also not used it completely, but I've tried to use it in my past, and I want to kind of stick to this metrics going forward in my next assignment. Karthika, are you able to share the PDF?
Yeah.
So essentially what we are saying is look at sharing the report with two lenses. One is with the lens of, see, beneficiary will always be important. So while we're talking about the numbers and the impact that is created on the beneficiary or in the community, we are saying as an employer, what are the things that they look for when it comes to brand purpose? What are some of the elements that they would want to look for when it comes to employee engagement? And the same goes for CSR. And similarly for employees, it's a pretty simple, alignment. So you would look at the testimonials. You would look at how many testimonials have they shared, how many people have shared who participated when they tagged them. What's the repeat participation over a period of time, if it's an ongoing engagement or if it's a skill-based volunteering. Did the volunteers feel connected to the company after volunteering? Do they feel that the company is playing a role by doing all sort of activities for their development?
Sorry to interrupt, Karthik. Can we please zoom in a little bit? If there's an option to do that. A little more, please. I'm not sure if it's visible to all though. No. But it's better maybe.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, these are basically what I would suggest that the report must have when it is sent out to corporate. A lot of it is not covered by a lot of us. We may not even have the bandwidth to cover all of it. So it's not that, again, one size doesn't fit all, right? So not each one of these questions will be applicable to a one-day engagement. But if you do, if you are, let's say, doing a quarterly engagement with the corporate where you have engaged their volunteers for a good 3 months, there are certain questions which you can consolidate and you can share with them at the end of 3 months. We will share this PDF with all of you, so need not worry. Karthike, you can just move back to the slides. I've just included like a couple of examples. So this is something, this is one of the reports that we had created for our client, where the entire context was on CSR. The objective was a CSR project. So you can look at, all of it is about numbers, all of it is about reaching, outreach the beneficiary, partners, how much of, things were able to make. Can we move to the next slide? Now, this is a perfect example of employee engagement. So, like, so we have actually included questions. We've included the, the experience bit. So most volunteers experience their own leadership development during the project cycle. And of course, they were leading questions to it. 5 volunteers are extending engagement with nonprofit. So again, you see that they are engaged. I mean, that's the reason why they want to engage with the nonprofit. 3 volunteers recommended the program to family and co-workers. Overall experience working with motivational and inspirational, understanding values and behavior of others. So again, the element of employee engagement has been considered in this. Can we move to the next slide? This I picked up from the net. So this is not something which we have worked on and I have any contribution to. I cannot take credit for this. But this is again a perfect example of how employee engagement reports can be prepared and the data which will be required by the corporate. So it's not important how you're presenting it. I think what's important is what data are you able to provide to them at the end of the volunteer engagement. And that is what's going to be important when you want to continue to work with the same corporate again and again. Can we move to the next slide? So risk mitigation, this is often something which is missed by most of us. Going by my very own example, I think 2013 was the first time when we got like a really big project for the first time. And of course, CSR wasn't really that valued at that point of time. And the The activity had to happen in 7 different cities on the same day in the month of June. And the same sort of activity had to happen. One thing that we all missed out heavily was on that June is also the month when it rains the most, right? We had no plans. We didn't know what to do. And neither the corporate thought about it and nor did we think about it. And on 22nd of June, 7 o'clock in the morning, when I woke up and I was getting ready to go to the project site, I realized that it was raining heavily. And we didn't have a plan. We didn't have an alternate plan. So risk mitigation, I think that's one major value add that you can provide as an organization. If you're an intermediary, then as a service provider to your clients, because that's what's going to make them to come back to you again and again. Can we, this is again going to be shared with you, so you need not worry too much. Be creative and be prepared. So how, everybody wants to do tree plantation, right? Like everybody. But how is it that you can make the experience of a simple tree plantation different? And what's the value proposition that you're adding so that corporate continues to reach out to you and not to the stronger intermediaries? So there are a lot of things that you can do. You can maybe, these are just some of the ideas that I am proposing. It's up to you and what do you want to kind of, make it work. So a carbon footprint awareness workshop, making an eco-friendly consumable product like a pen, pencil, food wraps, toothbrush. Can we do a composting activity or making eco-friendly disposable plates? These are not the ideas which usually will come to a lot of people or a lot of corporates. Can you do a department competition over a month of plastic collection or a newspaper collection? And then you put like the winners get an eco-friendly picnic arrangement with tree plantation as a reward. So can you pitch the same idea in a different manner? Okay, so this is something which we have put together, very, very simple questions. And I'm going to request Megha to take it so that I can just drink some water. I've been speaking for a pretty long time. Megha, please help.
Thanks, Neha. Yes. So if you can please put in the chat the right answers on who do you think celebrates the Make a Difference Day? Whether it's IBM, KPMG, or NVIDIA. I don't know how to pronounce that. Sorry. But can we please go to chat and okay? Akshay says KPMG. Neha is going to come back to answer. Oh, everybody says KPMG. Anybody who thinks it's IBM? No. KPMG. Okay. Right. Okay. Sure. Okay. Nobody who thinks it's not KPMG. I think I was the only one who didn't know, and yeah. Okay. Thanks. Great. Okay, Neha, I think we have a clear winner. It's KPMG.
Great. Okay. Can we move to the next slide?
Which of the following initiatives are celebrated in India during Earth Day? Option 4. Okay. Yeah. So I saw this meme that said that if in a corporate training, if there's an option that says all of the above and that's not true, then it's a scam, because all corporate trainings, wherever there's an all of the above option, that's the correct one. So I think Neha has worked with enough corporates to know that all of the above has to be the right answer.
Yeah, can we move to the next slide? This most of them would know, I think.
I don't know. So when was Amazon's Global Month of Volunteering celebrated in 2022? Akshay, August 15 to what? First. There's no option like that. August 15 to September 16. Yes. Option 1. Yes. Neha, have you got any prizes for people? Kya? Or just a free quiz?
I'll give them my phone number to reach out to me. Okay, just the last one, and then we can move to the main part, costing. Megha, you there? Okay, Global Community Day, Pathway to Progress, and Skill Marathon are the volunteering programs of which of these? Cool. Yeah, it is Citibank. Thanks, Aditi. Super. Everyone knows this. Super. Great. Okay, Karthike, can we move to the next slide? Okay, coming to the main aspect, I think everybody wants to know about costing. On how do we kind of cost the volunteers? How do we cost the corporates about different volunteering programs? So for us, it's pretty simple. I mean, as an intermediary, it's a very simple exercise for us to do, which we do on an annual basis. We just look at the revenues coming in and we just look at all the expenses going out and we divide it and we know that this is the average price per volunteer because we only do volunteer engagement. And the same can apply to most of you, but of course, then you can't wait for the entire year, right, to know whether you are working in loss or you're working in, whether you're really generating revenues. So there are ways which we think can work. You can either do a per volunteer cost or you can do a per project cost. You can do an annual fees, and after a few cycles, you can definitely read your margins and see what's the cost correction that you want to implement. Karthik, can we move to the next slide? Yeah. So the way that we derive the cost for any volunteer engagement is a very typical, way that most of the programs cost are defined. We look at the resource cost, the human capital cost, the equipment cost, any supplies that go with the volunteering program. Let's say it's a tree plantation, you do require a lot of supplies around it. Travel, you may be required to travel a few times if it's a ask of the volunteering program. Training, you may need to train a few people for on the day activity or during the, you can design a recurring volunteering program with the same set of employees, but you may have different people going in to assist them for volunteering. So you may need to train certain, people. Overhead cost, of course, and the organization cost, which is often the indirect cost, and not many think about it. Yeah, so I've kind of tried to put this costing on the CSR. I mean, just basis the CSR activity. This may or may not be, the numbers may or may not be correct. Please, apologies if the numbers are incorrect here, but the entire context why I've done this is so that I can kind of just show you on how we derive the activity cost through CSR if it's a voluntary program. So the first, there are 3 different projects. All 3 are defined with different sort of boundaries. So the first project is a school transformation project where there'll be 1 school, 7 classrooms will be transformed and it will engage 100 volunteers. So the cost typically would be contractor, additional brush, volunteer hygiene kits, travel and logistics arrangement. And there would be a total project cost, and you can often charge between 10% to 12% as your admin fees, which is typically what is acceptable, and most of the corporates agree for that. The next project is the menstrual hygiene kits, 100 kits for, this will be made by 50 volunteers, and there'll be 50 beneficiaries who will be supported for 3 months. So again, we have put together the entire cost for different elements, and you can look at the cost that way. So that's one way that we consider the cost, or we propose the cost to the corporate, and they often accept this. Of course, number will be what you believe the number should be for that particular activity. I'm not going to run by the third example. The slide will be shared with you. You can go through it. Can we move to the next slide? Or you can go ahead with this particular example of how they can. And the reason why I have put this metrics, it does look very complex, but all of you are different NGOs. All of you will have your own programs, which will be different for each organization. And you can either look at the cost in the CSR manner, or you can look at the project cost in the manner which is more consultancy. So this is the more consultancy sort of matrix, where you divide the activity into 3 aspects: pre-event, during event, and post-event. There are certain elements in pre-event, certain during event, and post-event. And there's a typical, consultant and the mandates model. So where you see R3, it means it will be 3 days of work, which will be required by consultant, CSM, customer success manager. Or where you see A2, that means that the 2 days of mandate will be required to scope the work. So that's the another model. You can try whatever model works for you, and you can look at the cost. Karthike, can we move to the next slide? Okay, can move back to the next, the earlier slide. I personally refrain from taking this particular, costing model, because this is where they start eliminating a lot of aspects and saying that this is not required, remove this, remove this. This particular model is often very beneficially when you have to justify the cost. So you can have, I'm not sure how do you all look at the cost, but if I have to just look at a per volunteer cost anywhere between, most of the organization who I have worked with, they charge between 500 to 700 per volunteer cost. And depending on what kind of project it is, the supplies are, considered additionally. But a lot of time, if it's a CSR grant, then you would be required to justify the cost. If it's a branding, then again, if it's from the employee engagement perspective, not so much. I don't think they ask too much on please justify the cost and all. So yeah, this is how primarily we look at the costing model, and able to, pitch to the client and get their nod, retain, continue working with them, and able to generate revenues. This is where the content that we have put together is completed, but happy to answer any questions right now. Megha, how do we proceed?
Yeah, I think we can move on to questions. I have a few questions, and then we can take in questions from the audience. Is my voice echoing? Want to check? No, my voice is not echoing, right? So, Neha, one question that I think I have is that so if I meet a corporate in say a CSR summit or any of the meetings, and I'm not sure how do I pitch to them. Like I may get to talk to them, tell them I want to do the employee engagement. How do I make sure that I know what sort of a budget, what sort of a costing I should send to them, so that I get a approval, or I'm not maybe pitching too high or too low from their standards?
See, standard as such, we really do not have any standard as such in the Indian industry so far. But yeah, anywhere between, so I know organization who charge 1,000 per volunteer plus the supplies and the material cost, and I know organization who charge 500 for the same cost, additional supply and material cost. So really, there's no benchmarking, but of course, experience matters everywhere. And it is, and the experience begins from the very first meeting, right? When you're meeting an organization. So like very simple things that I would do, I'm just, again, going to give my example. If I'm going and meeting somebody, or who I intend to meet in, let's say, a networking event, and I know that I'm going to, there is a possibility to meet somebody there who I want to kind of, reach out to for corporate volunteering program. I'll always do like a little bit of research about the person who I'm going to meet, about the programs they've done in the past, about their focus areas, about what would really catch their attention. Like, just to give you an example, not going to name the company or the person, but we were to meet this organization who are not considered as water-friendly organization, right? So I kind of did my research on LinkedIn on what kind of things will work out to break the ice with this particular person. What are some of the common things that we have? What are some of the focus areas that we as an organization can align with their organization. And I had some basic thoughts in my mind. So when I reached out to him, I knew how to first break the ice and start the conversation, get his attention, and then start talking about some of the aspects where we can work together, or, talk about, maybe if you don't want to be like to this thing, you can always talk about the changes that you want to bring into a region which is close to their company, their, location, and say that particular one area, where we would want to do some project which will help them with water restoration, or, with making a water reservoir or something. So that always works out, Megha. And it has principally got me like a lot of clients, because they have already decided that, okay, she knows what she's talking about. The organization knows what they're talking about, and we can work with them.
Right. Thanks. I'll let Shivam ask this question, and then I'll take the questions in the chat.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Shivam.
Yeah. Hi. I had two questions. The first one was, what is a preferable way of engaging the volunteers? Like, should we do a short-term volunteering program or a long-term one? This is the first question. And second one is, how do we ensure that whoever volunteers, they have registered for the program? Like, I had a situation wherein we asked a particular corporate and they agreed to give us 30 volunteers. But in the end of the day, 8 or 9 only turned up. So how do we ensure that our volunteers come for the program? Certainly those who have registered. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to answer the second question first, because that's a very, very common scenario, Shibam. One rule that we follow is we always count like a 40% attrition. So we know that if we are looking for participation from 60 volunteers, we have to open registration for at least 80 or more, right? So that's one thing that we always keep in mind. The same goes for making all the arrangements. If you have got 80 volunteers, if you've been promised 80 volunteers, I wouldn't go for preparing for more than 65 volunteers. Otherwise, it will be a waste of a lot of resources. So that's the answer to the second question. The first question, long-term or short-term, I think it will really depend on the objective and how do you kind of pitch to the client. So just for example, if it's an employee engagement activity, I don't think employee engagement activity, the kind of measurements that HR wants to do through employee engagement, can work out in a one-day activity. It will only happen if it's happening in a recurring model. So then you have to first understand the objective. If it's a brand building activity, then propose to them a short-term, a one-day activity. If it's for CSR, then obviously you need to think a little deeper and you need to create a model where there can be, so it's a 1 month long CSR project, and the volunteers can keep coming every Wednesday, every Monday, every Friday, whatever works out for them. And it could be the same set of volunteers or different set of volunteers. So you can think of different models. But that's why the objective is extremely important. And you remember that mind map that we had made, that's extremely important. So once you know what's the purpose that they're doing something, it will be easy for you to propose to them.
Ma'am, I have one question.
Yeah. Please go
Hi.
ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So this is Pratik Dabur speaking from Renovate India. So, ma'am, we have a confusion. We are a social enterprise and we actually are into employee volunteering, wherein we volunteer, we support with the volunteering activities to the corporates through our network of grassroots organizations, NGOs. So I just wanted to understand what is a better way of, who is a better department to pitch to, because in some organizations, CSR handles the employee volunteering, in some organizations, the HR handles. So in order to get projects approved at a faster rate, or improve our, approval rate, what is the better, which is a better department to approach to get the project finalized?
I think there is
I hope the question is clear.
The question is clear, it's quite clear, but I don't have a clear answer to that question, Pratik, because see, if it's a purely employee engagement tool and you do not have like an ATG to provide to the corporate, then maybe CSR is really not the right option for you, because you can't really report to them and you can't really give them what they would want under CSR. So employee resource groups, HR are the best people to look out for. A lot of places, even if you think some brand has that sort of a social mission, or they add some sort of social value, their products add some sort of social value, you can reach out to the marketing team also. But I don't really have a standard answer to this question.
But HR is, that's what you say that.
See, right now, HR and even employee resource groups are coming up big time. You would, I mean, if you just kind of do a little bit of Google, you'll see that a lot of big companies have their own employee resource groups, which are like different clubs, different interest clubs within the HR function. So they are the best people to reach out to.
Can you just suggest me few examples of such employee resource group?
Deloitte has one, SAP has. You can actually Google and you can see, you can write ERGs for different corporates and you'll get a long list.
Perfect. Okay, ma'am. And ma'am, can you just one supplementary question? Can you suggest me few activities in now that ESG is a buzzword? In terms of ESG, what employee volunteering activities could be more effective and more, uh, it would create more impact and it will be more effective.
Okay, I again don't have a direct answer to this because everything is ESG if you come to think about it. Everything is about environment, everything is about social, everything is about governance. So it could be the same project which could be reported in the manner where it takes the interest of the ESG. See, a volunteering project can be reported as a CSR project also. If you use the right metrics, if you use the right indicators. Similarly, the same volunteering project can be reported as a ESG project if you use the right indicators. But honestly, I do not know what are those indicators in full-fledged. I haven't done so much of research on ESG. So I wouldn't be the right person to really answer that.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Prateek. Neha, Rimple has asked a question on how to pitch to an organization who has never engaged or has never thought of doing corporate volunteering, especially when they might be already internally doing some CSR spending, but not volunteering. So how do you, so in short, how do you get somebody to do volunteering who's already doing CSR, but not engaging their employees so much into it?
But then why would you want to pitch to an organization who doesn't want to do corporate volunteering? I mean, that's a
potential client now.
Yeah, it could be a potential client. I mean, there are ways that you can, of course, definitely, engage them. And there are ways that you can go ahead and engage them in a lot of meaningful volunteering. But I mean, I'm just basically just thinking that who has never engaged or never thought of doing corporate volunteering? The basic is that you go and pitch to them and show them the value, right? That's the very first thing that you can do. But they should be able to give you that sort of listening. So yeah, go pitch, do your research, see what works out for them. The type of volunteering that they are doing, it's all about experience. If they are doing the volunteering in areas where you can add value, you can do, you can add, you can create something new out of that. You can talk about that, you can pitch in that manner. But I doubt very much. I mean, I'm just thinking that even though it's a potential client, it's not that they would have not thought about corporate volunteering. They would have thought about it. There are a lot of organizations who have thought about corporate volunteering and have taken a very, very conscious call of doing it internally and not getting an organization on board to manage the volunteering. So in that case, the primary question is, what do you pitch to them? Do you pitch to them a CSR and then tell them, then create a volunteering project within that CSR and tell them that, we can add value to your CSR projects? Is that the way to really do that? Because I know for sure, I know a couple of companies who have in the past wanted to do, and then they have hired a resource because of different reasons. They have done their own calculations and they've realized that doing it themselves is much more effective for them. They have so much more control on their volunteers. They have so much more control on their decision making. They take the liability or the entire responsibility of the volunteering event. So I know maybe I'm not answering the question to what Rimple has asked, but I'm just saying it's a way to look at it. I mean, when there's so many corporates who want to engage in volunteering, why would you go to somebody who doesn't want to? You should always go to people who want to engage in corporate volunteering, right?
Yeah, Rimple, please feel free to unmute and add on to the question if you think that's not answered. I'm going to move on the next question in 10 seconds, maybe. I'll give some breather to Neha to pause and drink water, maybe. Yeah. So, Neha, so yesterday, so we have this EIB WhatsApp group that you know for every Indian volunteering organizations that promote volunteering at scale. We have put them in a WhatsApp group and we engage in questions, discussions, share resources, and people can share with each other. So yesterday in the group we posted to understand if corporate volunteering can actually build a spirit of volunteering among employees, given that you know how it's mandatory and how forced it may be sometimes. Do you think corporate volunteering is actually able to build more volunteers in the country?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I do. Yeah, it definitely does, Megha, because I think one of the most sought after bases to kind of, reach out to masses is corporates. The kind of volume that you can reach out to is definitely institutional. So you can go to corporates, you can go to colleges, you can go to schools. But the best participation would definitely come from corporate because one, they have, they are over with their education mostly. And they are their own decision maker. So
but they're not looking for certificates also.
They're not even looking for certificates.
Yeah.
So whatever they're doing, they're actually doing out of their own free will. And they're doing it because they want to do it. It's not that, it's not a tick mark for them. So I personally believe that there is a very, very strong potential coming out from the volunteers from corporate. I have seen people moving out from, their full-time jobs to volunteering, either volunteering boards or doing a lot of volunteering by themselves or starting their own organizations.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So Aditi has asked a very interesting question on how to promote calendared volunteering in corporation. You spoke about Global Volunteering Month, Earth Day. How do you promote that? And if you can elaborate on that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Megha. I think I'm just going to talk about Goodera, because if you just go to Goodera's website, they have this entire one very strong page on, calendar, different months and what every month suggests what kind of volunteering can happen. So, and everybody wants to do it these days. It's not something that is new. I think everybody wants to do a calendared volunteering. So Aditi, basis your experience with the corporate, I think I will always go by the example that you need to start small, because that's where you're setting the expectation. Once you've done a couple of pilots, you actually propose to them the calendar for the entire year, and you tell them what's the opportunity if you do the entire calendar year. So impact that you're creating, consolidated impact that you're creating out of that calendar. And the kind of outreach that you can have within the employees, the overall base. If these are some of the highlights that you can include when you're sending the proposal or when you're talking about the calendared campaigns, it will be very, very beneficial and very useful. I don't think anybody would say no to a consolidated effort, shown to them.
Yeah. Somebody named iPhone 13 has raised their hand. Please ask.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I've joined from my phone, so maybe my phone.
Yeah, your iPhone, yes.
Yeah. So I'm Pallavi from CRY Child Rights and You, and I'm handling volunteer action at CRY West. I joined late. Sorry, I had an orientation session for volunteers in the morning, because this is we do on weekends. My question to to Neha or like whoever can answer is corporate volunteers. Yes, as you rightly said that okay, the education is over, they can make their own decision, and not that they'll be coming back to us and saying that now my exams are there, I will not be able to volunteer for another 2 months. I'm going further. I'm going abroad for further studies and then dropping out. Yes, but my one concern with the corporate volunteers is that they just want to do one time volunteering कि मुझे एक दिन आना है, plantation करना है, जाना है. That's like that's the most of the time they are like, because they are like say we are busy with our own corporate life, and then with our things, and then it just a one time thing just because my organization also is asking me to do, and also I'm busy, I won't be able to do any long term volunteering. It's just a one day volunteering that I'll be able to do it. But how to get them to do long term volunteering?
Pallavi, so I think this is a very by far the most, this is a challenge which everybody faces. Most of people, they actually face, because typically these are one day activities which are promoted by the employers, and employer want to come here because they want to, because of peer pressure and 100 different things. And obviously it's a secondary job for them. It's not really the first job for them, and it will always be a very strong pyramid. So you can have like 100 volunteers, but only 2 would want to do a very long-term engagement with you, or something which will be more meaningful to you. But the entire context is how many can you generate out of that 100? I mean, how many can you kind of just keep retaining, and how can you show them the value that volunteering has on their life and on the beneficiary? So somehow, tree plantations, school transformation, all these activities, they have a lot of gratifying feelings. But at the end of the day, they really don't understand why they're doing it. And one thing which I have seen missing often is that the context is not set to the volunteers. Matlab, volunteer orientation mein, what are you telling them? Why are they doing the tree plantation? What's the reason for it? Why are they painting a school? Right? Who are they doing it for? Who are these children? How they painting a school may be helpful? How planting that tree may be helpful? So unless that objective, that that sensitization is not done to the volunteers, I do not see a reason why they would want to stick around. I mean, if it's just a tree plantation activity without really them thinking that the tree plantation can be beneficial to for so many things, they may not want to do it. And that's something that you need to accept, that there will always be this challenge of retaining more than a certain number of volunteers. And one day activities will remain to be the popular one because they give you that sort of, instant gratification.
Thanks. So Rajalakshmi, I'm going to plug in the question as well. So they say that they engage with school students, and their activities are mostly happening in schools facilitating session, but it also clashes with corporates working hours, and they can't do school sessions in weekends, and corporates can't come on weekends. So how do they resolve that? And Sneha, sorry, before you answer that, I want to put in a feedback form in the chat for people to fill in. This also has the link to join the WhatsApp EIB WhatsApp group if you want to join in. Thanks, Sneha. Over to you, Sari.
We have expectation of long-term engagement plan, but during work hours, they are not able to contribute as our volunteer. Okay. Rajlakshmi, I'm not sure if you've tried the rotational volunteering model. It's a lot of efforts, but I think it's worth it. So I had tried this long back with a group of volunteers from Mondelez. So the same set of volunteers cannot come every day, but I'm sure right now the kind of system that we are living in, most of the corporates are giving monthly 2 hours or 4 hours of volunteering time to each employee. So if you can actually try the rotational model, and you can actually have this conversation right at the beginning that you want to explore this model where you would want to do a rotational volunteering bit. Different group of volunteers coming in on different days. And that may be useful because I had tried this model with Mondelez and with Cummins, and it was useful. And we were able to make it work. And of course, weekdays could be one, nice, motivational sort of the entire group activity, which will continue to motivate the volunteers to continue the engagement. So you can try different sort of models, you can try different approach, you can have a strong expectation setting right at the beginning, and it may be useful.
Thanks. John from Sampark has asked that is there any potential collective platform where they can show, where they can showcase their EVP? I'm not sure what EVP is.
Employee volunteering program.
Sorry. Yes. Okay.
There are so many potential collective platforms. There is CSR Box, which comes to my mind immediately. Definitely CSR Box, because I do remember putting up a lot of employee volunteering program from iVolunteer. So that for sure is there. Goodera is not an open platform. So you can always reach out to different intermediary organization, and you can have a strategic sort of partnership with them if you want, and they would be willing to kind of, also showcase your program in their calendars to the client. They may not put it up on the platform, but that's when, that's another way to kind of reach out to more corporates.
Yeah, I see Garima has raised her hand. Please unmute and ask.
Yeah, Neha, I just want to know, because we have also witnessed that there is a need for an orientation program before these employees they go into the community.
Yeah.
Because we also believe at ISDM, we also believe that these engagements should be sustained engagements. So though we are in the process of convincing the CSR heads or people engagement team head that do get into orientation program, so it's a paid thing for them which we are proposing, though we have not got a very positive response. But the another thing like which I want to ask from you, like once we have oriented these volunteers towards the community service or the long-term engagement services, is there any platform of the SPO for the NGOs, non-profit organization, wherein we can find out what kind of volunteering services they need so that we can do their skill mapping? So any existing platform to do that, where we can tie up with all these non-profit organizations?
There is. I am not sure how many of are making it like an open platform, but I know that iVolunteer does a lot. You can reach out to iVolunteer. You can reach out to Connect For. You can reach out to Goodera. There are a lot of intermediary organizations who would be willing, Garima, and they would be very much, they would already have a directory of a lot of, corporate needs.
Thank you.
Cool.
Right. Thanks, Neha. And I also think there are also intermediaries who do not charge non-profits for these services, right?
They do not. They do not. Most of the intermediaries, they do not charge the non-profits for services. In fact, I do know of a lot of intermediaries who are also paying per volunteer cost to the non-profits who they engage. Like Goodera, for a lot of volunteering projects, they pay out per volunteer cost to the non-profits who are helping them engage.
Right. Okay. All right. I think we're, yes, please, Akshay, go ahead.
Hello, Neha. I think it's a good session for you do about the corporate volunteering. I have a question that if a small NGO can do the volunteering, corporate volunteering, if they don't have the 8 kg and some certificate, how they do?
They can do it on service fee as an employee engagement model, Akshay. It will not fall within the purview of CSR, but it will definitely fall under employee engagement, ERG, or under promotional activities. A lot of promotional activities can be undertaken as volunteering as well, which of course has a social value.
Thank you.
All right, I can wait for a few more seconds for people to ask questions. Please do fill in the feedback form. It helps us improve our improve our webinars. It also has a link for you to join our WhatsApp group if you want to get connected to the Every Indian volunteering community, where you can actually connect with nonprofits or engaging volunteers. It's not a platform yet, but we're building a community where you can connect and network and engage with people. Neha, thank you so much for your time and your efforts. I know you have put in a lot of efforts in putting together that deck and all the tools that you're sharing with the people. Thanks so much. If you could also share with people how they can reach out to you, I can share your LinkedIn profile in the feedback form or the email that I'll send to them.
Sure.
Yes. And for some of you, Neha is also looking for more employees to join her team in Mumbai at Impact Guru. So if there's somebody who wants to work with Neha in Mumbai, please connect with her on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so just something that Megha missed out at the beginning is that while I'm not a part of Goodera now, I am joining the next organization, which is Impact Guru, in the next 10 days. And I'm looking to build my team. Anybody interested can directly reach out to me. My email ID is going to be there in the presentation, which Megha will forward to you all.
Yeah, we have a next question, Neha. How to take updates from the corporate companies once we send a proposal? Mostly they don't reply easily when we email. Yeah.
Yeah, they do not respond very easily. I think the rapport building with the corporates is a whole another set of exercise and the pointers that it requires, Megha. A lot of time, and I personally feel that a lot of time, two things work in favor of developing a very strong corporate volunteering program where corporate are equal participants and not just kind of followers of what you say. One is you have to build a very strong rapport and you have to come to a consensus of how do you want to plan the entire, volunteering program. Do you want it to be led completely by your organization? Do corporates want to be a part of it in the planning stage? So all that things come later on when you start planning. But yeah, rapport building is extremely, extremely important. And that is why I continue to say that whenever you're going and meeting somebody, or you know who you want to meet, or you know the corporate that you have in mind to reach out to, know them, like just know them so well that they should question you about themselves. It may not always be possible, but it works. Trust me, it'll work like magic. I mean, imagine you going and meeting a corporate who's already doing STEM projects, and you go and tell them that, I read your annual report, and you have mentioned that you have been able to reach so many beneficiary, and you educated so many girls. It was fascinating. Congratulations! What a well job done. I mean, they'll be so happy because you're already starting with an ego boost for them, right? They want to talk to you. They want to tell you more about themselves. They want to tell you more about the program. And that's where you break that ice and, start talking to them, start understanding what do they want to do next. So what are your plans for next year? Ask them. I know that for you this year, these are some of the changes that have happened and people are moving towards ESG. What are your plans about that? You will very easily see when you start having such conversation, there'll be some touch points which will be very common. And you have to really leverage on those touch points. So it's really all about knowing your client well. The moment you've done your research, you know your client, you know how to go about it. I know a lot of you have also asked about how do we know how to pitch to which organization is the right one to pitch to. There is again no standard answer to that, but maybe just seeing which are the biggest which are the biggest organization. Like I was just the other day was just doing one research, and I was just looking at which can be my potential client, and I was able to actually get a list of top 300 corporates in India who alone can have the potential to give me more than 1 CR of volunteers. I'm talking about CR, about the volunteer numbers, not the revenue. So these top 300 corporates, if I'm able to kind of reach out to, it gives me a potential to actually reach out to 1 crore of volunteers. Can you believe the magnitude? Okay, 300 will not convert, maybe just 30
Yeah.
will convert, but it still gives me that opportunity, right? It gives me that opportunity to reach out. And Rimple, I'm sorry I could not answer your question because I firmly believe that whatever you've mentioned, another note here, what you're saying is correct. You know, often a lot of people who do not show interest, they turn out to be great volunteers. But I'd say for anybody's attention, if we are able to just show them the value of volunteering in what really matters to them, then they will continue to come to you. So these top 300, you can research, you can have the list ready with you, but how do you reach out to them? That remains a question always. So that's where a lot of your networking, marketing, LinkedIn, mails, lowest hanging fruit, you know, all that strategy will come into picture, and that will be handy. Yeah.
All right.
Meghal?
Thanks. Yeah. Anybody? Yeah. Sorry. Thanks. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks, Neha. Please,
Thank you,
please fill out
everyone.
the feedback form so we can improvise our webinars and get connected with you. We're doing a next webinar on 26th of May around tech platforms that can help you improve your volunteer management. So please fill the feedback form so we can send you a reminder on that, share more details on that. Thanks. Thank you, Neha. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.